All right. I'm recording. Brian, you recording?
Yep.
Andy, you recording?
Can we have 6 minutes of heavy sighs to start? Is that cool? I don't.
I'm going to keep this in. Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast. Retro Review. Star Wars Episode 1. The Phantom Menace. Are you an angel? I'm Ariel Rada.
And Misa, your humble servant, Andy Bowman.
And today we are going to do a review in honor of May the 4th. So we are paying our royalties to Disney for doing this podcast and tweeting about it, apparently. Giving them permission to use all our audio. But we are joined by a special guest and friend of the show, Brian Gill from Mad About Movies. What's up, Brian?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me, or curse you for having me, one way or the other. Yeah.
I'm sorry that this burden was yours to bear, my dear Frodo.
It's tough. It's tough.
Jeez, this... guys, we're only talking the Phantom Menace today.
Right, you didn't watch Attack of the Clones, Ariel.
I did not. And because I love myself. And I hated myself just enough for me to watch this, but not enough to also watch Attack of the Clones. Just a quick setup here. This movie came out in 1999. We were supposed to do this retro review last year, and we just didn't get to it. But here we are, love in the time of Corona, and we are tackling it in the year 2020. I just want everyone to remember, if they watched it, if they're thinking about it, if they're remembering it, and as our discussion is going, that this came out only 2 years before the Lord of the Rings movie started. That's all I need to say. Okay. Where in the world do we start? Should we go through the plot points? Do we talk about what we thought back? Here's the easy one. Okay. We'll start with Andy, go to Brian, and then we'll end with me. What did we think back in 1999 when this came out? Andy, what were your thoughts in 1999?
And all right, in 1999, when I went to go see this, I was 8.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I went to the movie theater, and I've never been more hyped for a movie, never come out more excited for the movie. At the same time, it had pod racing. It had a kid my age in it, so representation matters, people.
Pod racing, no,
and it had dual lightsabers.
Yeah,
I don't remember anything else about it, but I mean, there might have been another like a plot or something. I don't know, but also there was a poopy joke. Hey.
Bantapudu. Brian, what were your thoughts back in 1999 when you were 35 years old?
Yeah. I was I'd already paid off several mortgages, and I was on my third marriage. I mean, I was 16. I grew up on Star Wars at a time when Star Wars was not cool. If you're older than me, then you got to like experience Star Wars, when it was in the theaters and stuff. And if you're younger than me, then your guys' age, pretty much, you kind of always come up in an era where there's been relevant Star Wars and stuff. And it wasn't the case for me. I was born in 83 when Return of the Jedi came out. And so, 16 years of no Star Wars. But like Andy, I've never been more, at least to that point, and very few times since, have been more excited for a movie going in. I skipped school to see it on opening day, which, wasn't a big deal for me because I like to skip school. But still, probably I got in trouble for skipping school to watch a Star Wars movie. And it was like probably a solid 6 months or maybe more before I would really acknowledge that what I had seen was not great. Like I could not let it be possible that Star Wars could be bad or not good or mediocre or whatever this ends up actually be. I don't know, but I certainly walked away saying that was awesome, and just so excited and just really would not allow myself to see through the holes for at least a bit. Now I do remember later that summer, my youth group was on a mission trip. We were somewhere in New Mexico. and our like first night we were there, our host family, you know, I was in a really big youth group, but we stayed in people's houses, like four people to a house or something like that. And so our host family first night was like, hey, gonna take you guys out to eat, and then we're gonna go see Star Wars, because it maybe was just getting there or it was still running in this little tiny like 12-seat theater, you know. And even at that point, you know, that was like probably 2 or 3 months later, and I was like, oh great, oh no, like this is, have y'all seen it? No? Oh okay, sure, you know. But even still, I think I probably walked away being like, hey, still Star Wars, you know, still Star Wars. And it really probably wasn't until I bought it on VHS when it came out and was rewatching it, that I really, really saw the flaws and was just like, gosh, this is kind of a bummer. So that's where that's my background on Phantom Menace, and learning that sometimes things you love can be bad.
Yeah, I kind of have an in-between experience with you guys. I love Star Wars. I distinctly remember when I was about 5 years old, I was like, Mom, I want to learn how to make a lightsaber, but like a real one. That didn't turn out all that well. And it's almost unfortunate is the wrong word, right? But the movie tricks you when you're 8 years old, because that lightsaber fight is unlike anything we had ever seen. Because, you know, the Vader Luke fights are not good. Choreography wise, right? The emotional impact's there, sure, but, and then you watch Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon face off against Darth Maul, and for somebody who, you know, as a kid, I watched a lot of like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, so like I knew what good choreography looked like, and it's all I remembered from it. And when it did come out on VHS, I remember I did not care. I went and played with action figures or twiddled my thumbs or bothered my grandparents or my parents while the movie was playing until it got to the very end. And I watched, you know, every clip of Obi-Wan, Darth Maul, and Qui-Gon Jinn. But it reminded me a lot of like Man of Steel. When Man of Steel came out, and I'm just like, I don't think this is good, but let me watch it again. Because the high of the Zod Superman fight, that Zod Superman fight, it's kind of like this, right? Where you're like, that whole movie's terrible, but then you watch that fight and you're just like, was it terrible? And it was. Both of them are pretty terrible. This is levels worse than that. But yeah, 1999, I was, you know, Andy and I were 8 years old. You were 16. Our prefrontal cortexes or whatever are not developed. We just don't quite fully understand what makes something good or what makes something bad. But I think it was so bad that we all kind of knew. Like I've probably rewatched episode 4 in my life, like upwards of 30 times. Phantom Menace I've probably seen 3 or 4 times in my life. And I think that's how you know, right? Like as a little kid, you don't know the reason why you don't go back and think like, man, did I think this? But no, I just knew. Like I knew in my heart. But yeah, so it's, how was it? 21 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, what do you think of the Phantom Menace now?
I mean, it's not good. It's still to me has always been maybe light years ahead of Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones is just a really painful experience. So I like this better. I think you're right, Art. It's because of the way that it ends. That's maybe the best thing you can say about Phantom Menace is that it ends on a high. The last 15, 20 minutes are the best part of the movie by a really, really long stretch. And the action sequence is cool, and Duel of the Fates is great, and you know the score is awesome, and that, you know, the battle between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan is really good, and it's you get a taste of like what Darth Maul could have been in this franchise if they had just not killed him off immediately, because he is pretty cool. I don't know that he's a good villain, but he's a cool villain, and sometimes
he's
that's
given nothing to do.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes that's, I don't know, most of the battle is just to be cool. So it ends on the high. There's a couple. I think the pod racing scene still is good from an action standpoint. It's just that it features so much Jake Lloyd, and he's just atrocious. But you get Samuel L. Jackson's good to some degree, is fun and is clearly there just to have a really good time, and he's excited to be there and stuff. And there's some other things that pop up here and there, but the acting's just so bad, and the story, it's still mind-boggling to me. Like, this might be George Lucas's greatest crime, is not casting terrible actors in some of these roles and some of the other stuff that he's done along the way. It's deciding that Star Wars has been out of the mainstream. We haven't had a Star Wars movie in 16 years, and we're all hyped and so pumped up to see this movie, and we're gonna base it around trade talks and treaties and stuff. And it's like the kind of Star Trek episode where you're like, no thanks, and just fast forward to the next one. I mean, it's really dull, and it's always blown my mind that he got to sit around for so long thinking about what he wanted his baby to be, in its next iteration. And this was the decision that we made, that we were going to spend a solid 40 minutes of this movie talking about the politics of the Galactic Republic, which no one cares about. And it's kind of mind-boggling on that front. So not great, man. Not great.
Yeah, I think it's really important to mention the thing that really stuck out to me, because I had just watched episode 4 and I watched the beginning of episode 5, or A New Hope and Empire. The beginnings of those movies they just draw you in so well. The Star Destroyer coming over the top of your screen is all-time great movie introduction.
Yeah.
In Empire, when you expect the world of Star Wars to be one thing and he spins you on his head and you find this really cool, different, like, climate, right? With these characters that you've missed and recognize, like, that works. And then you watch this and you're like, are they talking about a trade blockade? And I remember my thought when I was 8 years old. I literally, like, looked around thinking, am I in the right movie?
Yeah.
Because it just didn't feel like Star Wars. Andy, what were your thoughts upon a rewatch of The Phantom Menace?
Oh, man. I got to tell you, okay? This was a breezy 80 minutes long. And I love that about George Lucas. And I also love that about the fan edit that I downloaded and watched. All right.
That's cheating,
80
man.
minutes.
That's cheating. Gosh.
The only thing wrong with the fan edit, which, by the way, I do own the Blu-ray. This is a completely legal way to enjoy the movie. The only thing that they cut out was the real star of the show, one comedian, Mr. Greg Proops, as the podcast race announcer, one of the heads. So I pulled double duty here. I watched this fan edit and then I watched the full thing on Disney Plus in the background while I did other things. The fan edit's really good. There's no talk about trade. There's barely any Jar Jar. Anakin doesn't accidentally save the day. It's fascinating. Even doing my PhD level stats work, I found that stats work more interesting than the original cut of this movie.
Yeah, and you're an adult. Think about what it was like when you were a kid, Like, it's just, what are we doing? This is
Adderall. Like, what if this is on, I can focus on whatever I need to focus on. I mean, and that's the thing. This is really good at tricking kids. It's really good at playing up to kids. George Lucas was a father at this point, and I really think that he was trying to appeal to his kid. And I think this can tell. I also think he has no chemistry with kids because Jake Lloyd. Oh, that is bad. But there's more things bad about this movie. There's just so many things wrong with the way the races are portrayed.
I think we have to make that like a main point that we talk about.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later. There's always a bigger fish.
And it happens twice.
Just disappointing is the best thing I can say about this movie.
Yeah. So upon rewatch, it's weird. And so I like I said, I just watched episode 4, which is not a great juxtaposition when it comes to taking a look at, trying to give Phantom Menace the benefit of the doubt. It's not great. It makes it look infinitely worse when you look at what he was able to do in 77. More stuff happens in the first 10 minutes of the Phantom Menace than in like the first 35, 40 minutes of A New Hope. Like, he's just cramming so much stuff. He's lost the art of storytelling somehow. I don't, and I think we know that one of the reasons is the fact that he has become so untouchably famous that like nobody wants to say no, right? It's happened with Michael Jordan when it comes to basketball. It's happened with Stephen King, I think, is the best example from a literary standpoint, where he's like, dude, you need an editor. Like, and I think to some degree, like when Quentin Tarantino's editor passed after, what was it, Django, Brian? I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And then there's just something wrong. Like there's something not the same. And I think in 15 years, if Tarantino was still making movies, I think it'll start to look like this in a way. I think if you look at what's that movie that Wes Anderson is making, the French
Dispatch. Goodness, yeah,
the French Dispatch, where it's just like 170% Wes Anderson. Like that, it might be happening to him too. But I just don't know. I don't know what happened with this. I think there are 3 things we need to talk about when it comes to the Phantom Menace. And then we'll make those our 3 plot points. We'll make fun of the movie some more, and we'll get out of here. The first one's got to be Jake Lloyd and the centering or off centering of Anakin Skywalker. Is there a version of this movie, or what can we do to this movie, this story, this prequel, to make the Anakin stuff work? Besides getting a different actor.
See, for me, that's the thing is like, I think these movies can get by with please hear me, not be like up to the standard of the original trilogy, but like they're better if they just, if George Lucas is capable of casting, and he's just not. I mean, he's just not good at casting, and at this point at all. And you see that with Jake Lloyd, you see that with Hayden Christensen in the next one, but even like so many of the bit characters and stuff, those are not good actors either. And then when you see how badly, his directorial stuff sabotages Natalie Portman, who is an Oscar caliber actress. I think she's a win. She has a win. She's a very good actress, and Ewan McGregor is a very good actor. And I think he gets better as the series goes, because he kind of figures out like, okay, I should just not listen to this person because he doesn't know what he's talking about. But there's a lot through the course of this that the director, the work of the director is not good. The story is not good. And then the actors are also not good. And that's just a really tough combination. It's really difficult to overcome all of those things being poor. So I've said this to you off the air, Ariel, and it's like, I don't want to get into the new trilogy, how good or bad it is or whatever, because I think we all have varying opinions on that, and that's okay. One of the major things that Disney, Lucasfilm, J.J. Abrams, etc. got correct with this new trilogy is they cast people who are very good actors, and at least in some cases, like Daisy Ridley especially, turned out to be very good actors because we didn't know anything about her really coming in. And because of that, because you have actors who are very good at their jobs, they're able to carry stuff that isn't that great story-wise or dialogue-wise or whatever. And
Right.
when you have Jake Lloyd delivering those lines, you know, "Are you an angel?" and a billion others. I mean, every line that he has is not good. It's very wooden, stilted, gross, not great dialogue. And then you also have this kid who, you know, even by kid actor standards, is just very, very bad. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I've gone on, but to answer your question, there's nothing you can do if you're going to cast Jake Lloyd and you're going to have this script. This is the movie that you get, and it's kind of a miracle that it's as quote unquote good as it is, because just those two things should make a movie like unwatchable, really.
Yeah, I do think. Do we think that? And then I'll shift this to you, Andy. Do we think that Anakin works better? Everything's the same except all they do is they age him up 4 years. He's 13. Padme's 16. Everything else is the same. Maybe not some of the lines.
A 14-year-old going yippee.
Yeah.
All right, Ariel. I agree that would definitely help. What I think really would change and make it better is you show this as a kid who is not a Christ analogy. You take that out. You take a kid
1999 big for Christ analogy, starting Matrix and this.
Fight Club, yeah. Okay, you take that entire you take that entire thing out. You take all of this chosen one stuff out. What you do is you make him a kid who is a slave and is abused and is not treated like an indentured servant, or like this is a kid who desperately wants to be free, and he has a lot of anger issues about that too. He has a lot of active anger issues about the captivity, and just make him incredibly. I mean, just as weird as it is, just crank it up. Like make him an angry kid about slavery who's being abused, not just kind of a worker who has to work.
Yeah, because. It's so funny because Yoda and Mace Windu are just like, and Obi-Wan even, they're just like, training this kid will go poorly. Something will happen. I'm like, dude, this is the most impressionable 9-year-old I've ever seen in my life. Like, what makes you think that if you're not raising this kid at 9, because he displays no sociopathic tendencies, he displays no flashes of anger, he displays unless he's like faking him saying I miss my mom, like he doesn't even display an overall connection to his mom. He's like the perfect kid who's too old to be a Jedi. And I know that it's probably supposed to be implied through the script, and it's not.
Well, did you notice the shadow? His shadow is Darth Vader.
I thought that was only in the poster.
It is. Wouldn't that be great if it was? That's what you
do the whole time.
That's what you do in the movie.
Yeah, it's brutal. I don't think I'm a big lore guy. I love lore. I love mythology, and I love when a fictional property creates a really expansive lore. And trying, like, in your head thinking of who in the world was Anakin Skywalker before episode 1 came out, I imagine was like one of the funnest things you could have done as a fan fiction writer, a big movie fan. And then for you to get this, that must have been like, if I was 25 when this came out, I would have been devastated.
Yeah.
But let's move on to everyone's favorite character. Do we have anything left to say about Jake Lloyd? I mean, that's a tough beat for that kid.
I mean, it's just amazing. We've talked about this on our show before that, like, I mean, they saw every single kid. Every kid who had any dreams or aspirations of acting came through the doors at some point, and George picked him, you know? It's
right.
That's a tough one, man.
That's one of the things, right? We know now that George handpicked this kid and wouldn't budge, from what I've read in certain articles and places. So.
But you guys are right too. I'm sorry. This is the last thing I'll say on that. The Hollywood has a thing with underaging and overaging people, kids, quote unquote kids, just really, really poorly. And it's this movie is much better if you just, well, it wouldn't have Jake Lloyd, so that'd be better. But if you just, like you kind of said, or I think if you, and you too, Andy, if you just make him like 14 or something instead of, well, he's got to be 8. You know, it's just 8-year-olds aren't good at acting. It's hard to be a good actor at 8 years old, you know, and especially when it's like this. It's not like the kid from Modern Family or something who just has to kind of stand there and be goofy. Like it's a real acting that you got to do here. Just, can we figure out a way? And wouldn't that story even work better when you're like, if you look at him and he's whatever, he's 17 or 18 years old and you say he's too old to train as a Padawan, and we're like, yeah, but he's got these great gifts, you know. That story is better if you do that. Not to mention the acting standpoint, but it's just a very odd decision to go that route.
Guys, what another, like, just 2 quick things they could have changed that would have made it interesting. 1, make at least one other member of the Jedi Council on Qui-Gon's side. 2, make Watto kind of afraid of him.
Yeah, the movie doesn't imply at all, besides the fact that they say he can podcast.
Pod race.
We
can podcast. He cannot. Well, actually, I can't. But
he was an early adopter, you know. It's the Bill Simmons of the Star Wars
That'd be
universe.
Amazing. He's the Conan O'Brien of the Star Wars universe. If besides saying he can pod race, like he displays and saying, I can kind of see, I have dreams that I come here and I free all the slaves.
Yeah, how do those dreams work out for you, kid?
Like, besides that, we don't get anything. And I think if you had a 13-year-old who, when he gets angry, the room shakes. Something as simple as that, right?
Mm-hmm. Like the kid from Looper.
Yeah, right. Or 11 from Stranger Things,
mm-hmm.
which is like, my head kept going back that way. It was like, man, what if we got like one of those kids to do this at 13? You know, something along those lines. We needed, as an audience, to be shown that Qui-Gon was right. And you just have no faith in that. But let's move on to the most superfluous character in any Star Wars movie, really. Jar Jar Binks. I'll go first here. There are several scenes where he is acting completely independent of everyone else in the scene, and he could just be erased, and nothing about that scene would change except if it's like a boring transition. Brian, what are your thoughts on the immortal Jar Jar Binks?
Jar Jar was the thing that I was angriest about coming out. Like, even, you know, at the time of like, man, I love this. This is just Star Wars and it's great. I was like, but Jar Jar Binks, not great. What were we doing there? You know, and he was so easy to pick on. But now it's like, to me, it's not necessarily a footnote, but he's further down the list of my top 10 things that are wrong with the Phantom Menace. And that I would have never believed that in 1999. You know, I would never think that we'd get to 2020 and I'd be like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jar Jar Binks is terrible, but here's 5 other really big issues with what we're doing here, you know, that we could get this far into the conversation without yelling about Jar Jar Binks, I guess, would be quite a surprise to me then. But yes, like Andy, you said, I mean, it's very clear that was his attempt to like kid this up a little bit and have something that's, you know, quote unquote comedic relief for the kids. And then also is not comedic at all, but very much is like, oh, the kids will love this. And then, you know, his kid at this point was like 18 years old and is like, Dad, this is just terrible. Like, what are we doing here? It's so off-putting, and it would be off-putting if the CGI was better. It would still be off-putting if the character didn't talk like a complete idiot. It would still be off. You know what I mean? It's like there's not one facet of his character design that makes any sense or adds anything to this movie at all. Like, if you I don't know, Andy, in your fan cut, it cuts Jar Jar out completely? I mean, is that
almost completely?
Okay. Even if
he's just kind of in the background chilling.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because like even this, I honestly, you could almost take the entire movie, not edit it at all, except for just erase Jar Jar from the video and audio track, and show it to somebody who's never seen this movie, and there might be like 3 spots where they're like, well, this is a little confusing. Who is he talking to? There's just an empty space next to him. Okay, no more, and move on, because he has no bearing on the movie whatsoever. And you see that, and I mean, George was pretty stubborn about it during the the backlash against this, but also guess who doesn't show up in the next 2 movies, basically, So I think that's one area where I think where George had a little bit of self-awareness and was like, okay, that didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go, but it's so painful to watch.
So another thing about Jar Jar in this edit, and this is kind of important, and one of the reasons why I buckled down and watched the full cut, he doesn't speak English in the edit.
Oh no.
They just put subtitles?
Yep, and alien noises.
I mean, that's less racist, to be honest.
But you guys, I do have a guest here.
Oh no! What are you gonna do?
Misa heard what you say about me, Ariel.
Oh my god!
Misa tries so hard. Misa tries so hard. On Gungan, Misa marks.
What do we think of that theory, the Darth Jar Jar theory?
Oh,
have you heard about this, Brian?
Yeah, but remind me. It's been a while, I guess.
So apparently, at some point, like Jar Jar is one of the key votes to give Palpatine like emergency powers during episode 2. Is that right, Andy? He brings that.
Correct, Ariel. You would know this if you sat through that movie.
And so the theory is that one of the intentions for Jar Jar was that he was way more intelligent than he lets on, and that it's all an act, and that was going to be a reveal in episode 3. Of course, it didn't come to pass. It's just the most ridiculous thing. Nobody has any like confirmations. Lucas has been like, when he's been asked about it, he's just been like non-committal to answer. He's given non-answers, which people are like, oh, that's pretty telling that he just doesn't answer. But he belongs in a different movie. I don't know what he's doing here. And you can't, and this goes to like the lack of human awareness that George Lucas currently has, where, I don't know how he thinks he can make a movie that like that is basically about Trade Federation, blockades and invasion treaties, and think that introducing this stupid character makes it friendly for kids.
Yes, very much agree with that. It's very much George Lucas just really not seeing the forest for the trees on a lot of things. But that's a great example of him just really getting lost in sort of his own mythology in a way, but certainly the mythology of his world, and just being like, well, I can't do the voice that Kent does on our show, but this is not how it happened, That's how it happened. There was a trade federation, and you're just like, well, okay, can we skip that part? Could we just jump ahead to the Clone Wars? Because the Clone Wars are cool. Let's do that. That'd be a great spot. No? Okay, well, awesome. Well, what are we doing then?
Well, that would have been the key, right? Where you make one movie all about, I don't know, like the whole trilogy should have been about the brotherhood of Anakin and Obi-Wan is really what it boils down to. And if you end it in with the same exact premise, where Anakin goes dark side and Obi-Wan slices him in half, it it just works. It brings so much emotional resonance. But like I texted you, like imagine if the whole trilogy was Qui-Gon Jinn as Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor as Anakin, and then it ends with, like, as much as it would break my heart, like it ends with Qui-Gon with Liam Neeson slicing Ewan McGregor's legs off. Like that's a better trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, but in terms of the Jar Jar stuff, it just goes to show that George Lucas just doesn't. And I say this about every bad thing I watch, because it's so prevalent among Hollywood quote unquote elites, like these super rich people, these super rich producers who when it's very clearly like they give notes and say, hey, you should put this in your movie instead. Mm-hmm. Supernatural likes to poke fun of this all the time, where they'll go meta and say like, man, it sounds like some Hollywood suit made you do this, and there's a director in an episode or something. But it's true. It's just like these guys who are driving like Lambos around with the tops down and just blowing money, whatever, just walks in and it's just like, hey, I'm the one funding this, so I think that you should put Jar Jar Binks in this movie. Like that's what it feels like. So it's really, truly awful. But let's get into one of the bigger issues surrounding Jar Jar and the Gungan people. It's just the blatant display of like racist tropes pasted upon alien races. What's the name of the alien race? The Viceroys?
I just call them the Viceroys. They're traitors. They're Asian, East Asian traitors.
Yeah, so they're the ones with the headdresses that you meet. They're like East Asian, and then there's one of them speaks legit in a Chinese accent, but he has like slits on his eyes. He's like they've managed to escape, whatever, and like it's super racist.
Dude, kids are racist. What can I say? You want to appeal to the kids?
Hey, I was called.
Gotta play to your market, you know.
I was called every racist name in the book growing up, so I can attest that kids are in fact racist.
Sorry.
Like the Gungans are some weird mix up of like Caribbean, Jamaican, and indigenous people. Andy, you could speak this. The Watto personality is horrendously racist.
Hold on. I got another guest here.
No, oh my God.
No. Yeah. So, you have the, old Jewish guy. First of all, I'm a Toydarian. Jedi mind tricks don't work on me. Only money. Holy sh**.
So Amanda, I told Amanda this movie is super racist, and she happened to walk in while he's saying that line, and she looks at me, she goes, is this real?
I thought the Ferengi in Star Trek were racist, but no, Watto. And keep in mind that in episode 2, we see Watto again, and he has fallen on hard times. Which really implies that the white slave he had was his entire living. Yeah. Everything about, like, I love Toydarians. I usually, when we're doing Star Wars Dungeons and Dragons, I will sometimes pick a Toydarian character because it's hilarious. But my God, that's bad. That was real bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems. What else is there to say about episode 9? I mean episode 9, episode 1.
That's a whole nother episode, Ariel.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I don't like, do you guys, here's the thing. How do you feel, both of you as Star Wars super fans, how do you feel about the midichlorians thing?
Please kill me. Like it's such it's one of the biggest cluster messes of this sequel trilogy. Even as a kid, and to be like, there were certainly ways to be like an uber Star Wars nerd and like really get into the mythology and the background and the books and all this sort of stuff. I really wasn't in that group, and it wasn't nearly as prevalent because the internet was barely a thing at that point. I mean, you had to really want to wait for your dial-up connection to set in to be able to go on some message board and and whine about that sort of thing. But even then, at that point, when it comes, you know, the whole midichlorian, and you're just like, that's not right at all. Like, that is so much opposite of what we know about this world up to this point. What are you doing? You know, what a stupid decision that was.
Andy.
I don't know what you're talking about. There was no mention at all. You know, I'm assuming that if these what do you midichlorians, I guess they're kind of some kind of like pool cleaner. I assume that if somebody who came up with this world made something that like a pool cleaner that determined your powers with the Force, that would probably be one of the dumbest things ever, because the Force is supposed to be a spiritual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, but of course that didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
So this is one of the things that I talk about. Like when people talk about characters being redeemed, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Kylo Ren needs to be like redeemed." I'm like, "Well, he killed his dad." But when they talk about Darth Vader, like, "Well, Darth Vader was redeemed," and I was like, "Well, in 1983, we have no idea what the dark side does to you. Like, is it like the ring? Does it corrupt you? Right? Does it, like, it's magical. We don't know. The Force is so mysterious. And then of course, Lucas in episode 3, like, ruins it, where like Anakin is just angsty. So he kills a bunch of kids. And so you can't look back.
Well, he had bad dreams, Ariel.
Yeah, he did have bad dreams. But this is one of those things where it's just like, wow, here is this empirical data that says the Force is this. It's like, it's so annoying because like in the real world, you know, if we say Michael Jordan is the most talented basketball player ever, like your eyes tell you that, your eyes might tell you that there are a few players, who are also that talented maybe, but like, we can't say that Michael Jordan has 20,000 midichlorians of basketball Force. It's just so much more interesting to just not know, to not leave it. It's
right. You don't need a reading on that. Like no one is sitting around wishing that they had empirical evidence of exactly how attractive Brad Pitt is. Who cares? Like we just look at him and say, that's a good looking dude, you know? So much foolishness. and again, he decided that was a thing after writing and doing the first 3 movies. Is like, nah, it's some sort of weird bug in your body. I mean, it's just a stupid decision all around.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling has taken up that same exact school where it's just like, well, actually, yeah, Voldemort did this instead, and it's just like, all right,
right.
Actually, we know wizards just shit everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like so many of these great creators, they just can't help but tinker. They it's, oh, man, and it's exhausting, and you want to just be like, okay, at least with J.K. you can say, it's fine. She's on Twitter. Or she's on her website doing like it doesn't really impact those movies to me whatsoever. And it's so easy to separate Fantastic Beasts from the Harry Potter movies, you know. And so it's like it's fine, whatever. But then George goes out to make a sequel series that in so many ways feels like him trying to, and this is after he tinkered and tampered through the course of the 90s with the special editions and stuff on the original trilogy and stuff. And it's just so much like, I didn't get to do this the way I wanted to in 1977, so I'm going to do it this way now. And you just like, but that doesn't jive with the thing that we really love that ostensibly in this universe comes after this. So it's not even, you can like make the argument of like they're it's evolving or whatever, whether it's midichlorians or whatever else. It's, we have to, we have to regress. It's just such a weird thing, and a weird thing that happens with prequels. But yes, you get these great creators, and they cannot leave it alone. I mean, Ridley Scott's done 5 different cuts of Blade Runner, and that's not even all that uncommon. These guys, they just can't help but tinker with it.
What's funny is that they're trying to figure out, like, as soon as they get a hint of that the Sith Lord is in the Senate, Like, why don't they just go like sneak? Like, there's no laws behind this. Just go steal people's blood. Go measure the midichlorians. Like, it's like I'm glad he doesn't do that. But it just builds such like you just don't need this. Like, the more mysterious you make your force, right, and you slowly introduce things that could maybe happen with them, the more interesting it gets. And you're like, that's like somebody figured out how to heal people with it. Somebody figured out how to keep people from dying. Like, those are things that you believe that this magical force can do. I don't believe that you can confine it to a number of things in a cell. I don't know. It's terrible. The number one thing I wrote in this, it's that the movie is literally, it's all plot and no character.
Yeah.
There's not a single character building moment in the entire film. You get more from Luke Skywalker with 5 minutes at his uncle and aunt's table than you do from any character in this whole movie. I don't know how we ended up here. It's really baffling.
Ariel, I will say that while there is no character building, there is character deconstruction when Darth Maul gets cut in half.
Heyo.
Voiced by the wonderful Peter Serafinowicz.
They didn't even let Ray Park. They didn't even let him voice him. You know what's funny is that's the only moment in that fight that doesn't work. That he just lets Obi-Wan jump over him, grab the lightsaber, and cut him.
Yeah, couldn't you do like a passing swing at his legs at least? You know, something.
Right.
Something to.
He doesn't. Yeah, he just stares.
Yeah.
He just stares the whole time.
Yeah.
Much like my corgi, go for the ankles.
Like if they had established that Qui-Gon is still alive during that, which is what happens, I think, in the end of Civil War, right, where Bucky distracts Iron Man, and that's what gives Cap the opening,
right?
But you know, it's like nicking 2 points off of 100 on that.
Yeah. You're quibbling on a little detail like that when we have so much through the rest of the movie. That's worth it.
Oh no. Any last points in regards to Star Wars: The Phantom Menace?
Yes, every Christmas, Ariel. This is a tradition of mine. Every Christmas, I sit down, and you know how some people have the Yule log running on their TV, a little fake fireplace. I play the Qui-Gon fireplace. So
the funeral pyre,
right. So someone on YouTube has made that into a Yule log. So I always sit down and have that playing in the background. That's nice. Real festive.
Brian, any last thoughts?
No, we kind of touched on it, but every time I watch these, which isn't very frequently, but you know, I love Star Wars, and my son loves Star Wars, and you know, I've said before, there was a time when he was watching the original trilogy so much that I put these on at some point just to get like a little bit of a different take, you know, and just like have something different on TV, which is bad Star Wars fansing, but I promise you is real life for parents. And even at like 2 years old, my son was like, no, I said I want to watch Star Wars. And I'm like, well, this is Star Wars. And he'd watch it for a couple more minutes and then be like, Dad, I said Star Wars. This is, you know, he hated it. But like every once in a while because of the Clone Wars show on Disney Plus and the Lego Star Wars shows and movies and stuff involve these characters a lot, and he watches those a lot. So every once in a while he'll be like, hey, let's watch, you know, this one. Let's watch the Phantom Menace. Or he doesn't even know the titles, but he'll say, let's watch the one with the battle droids or the one with whatever. And we'll put them on. And so I watched them fairly recently and like last week or whatever. And I marvel at the decision to make this sequel trilogy and just completely cut out the Clone Wars, which is the only cool thing that happens in almost the entirety of these three movies and that happens in a cartoon series, you know? And no knock on the series is great, but like we couldn't do that in a movie. We couldn't focus on that. I was so pumped for that when I was younger, when this was announced, because watching the original trilogy, and it's not like there's a bunch of mentions of it, but anytime the Clone Wars got mentioned, in A New Hope or whatever, I was always like, man, that sounds awesome. I want to know
is
more
that?
about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And it seems real easy to take these 3 movies and the Clone Wars series and just say, hey, we're going to make a trilogy out of this content. Now, what do we need to cut out? Oh, I know, the first 90 minutes of the first movie. Let's start there, and then we'll, we'll start cutting. But the decision to do that as a cartoon and to introduce General Grievous on the cartoon and then just have him pop up in the, the movie, it's so weird. And you watch this
Thank
movie,
you for
and you're
that,
just like,
Brian.
yeah, nobody needs this. Nobody needed so much of this content.
It would have been actually a really amazing and a really bold choice if you spend the first 30 minutes of the movie and you're introduced to Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon and Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, and you're like, this is the relationship we're going to follow. They're going to find Anakin. They're going to train them, whatever. But then you're introduced that the Jedi have thought that they were alone and Force users this whole time. The Sith are introduced, and in the first 30 minutes of the first act, Liam Neeson dies. That would, and then you get into the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars. You watch that series and you watch what Grievous does to people. You watch what Anakin does. You watch what bounty hunters can do. And then you watch Mace Windu. I don't know if you guys remember that episode. Where he demolishes a droid army by himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
and
amazing.
then you get into Revenge of the Sith, and Grievous is like, Obi-Wan. And it's just I can't believe we,
it's just fodder for TikTok memes. And it's so weird. It's so weird that we made that decision.
It's so annoying because it's you took somebody who was great at their job and you gave them a little piece of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And he made the best, outside of, I think, the first 2 movies, right? That's the best Star Wars thing. It took what we thought could happen with what the Jedi were like at the peak of their powers, what the Clone Wars could have been like, Jedis running around as generals, whatever, fighting droids, whatever, right? It's why people don't like droids, right? And he was able to display it in a way that the average person could not have dreamed. Andy, how old were we when that came out? 11, 12?
Which one?
The show or Attack. When did Attack of the Clones come out?
We would have been 12.
12. So yeah, we would have been 12, 13, 14 when that show came out. And I certainly could not have thought that up at even now, right? If you'd given me I don't know, it's just, and it's just, instead we got this. Is really the most frustrating thing. I think is really the phrase. Yeah. Instead, we got this, and it could have been this.
And it's not the worst. It's not the worst one. Attack of the Clones is so bad, so bad.
And that's why I always thought more fondly of this than Attack of. I just thought, man, that lightsaber fight was great, and I let's say a year removed. It was maybe Attack of the Clones is where the movies will start to make sense. He'll see what he did wrong. He'll come back, go back to more of a vibe of the old trilogy while keeping that lightsaber combat that we so desperately needed. But the combat's worse. It's way worse in Attack of the Clones than it is in either Phantom Menace or Revenge of the Sith. So yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible, and it's not the only thing that's worth talking about really with Phantom is film school breakdown. In terms of Star Wars lore, you just say it's bad. It's bad. It doesn't need to be this bad. But film school breakdowns, how do we get from A to B, from episode 4 to episode 1?
Ariel, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Red Letter Media review of this, but that was one of the first long form reviews I'd ever seen. It's a 90-minute review of this movie, picking it apart, step by step and taking it seriously. And it came out in 2008. So it was a really, really fascinating look at, like you're saying, basically it was a film school class of where every step went wrong.
Yeah.
And why it's wrong, and why the story structure doesn't work, and why Qui-Gon Jinn is acting like he's always on Jinn.
He probably was Liam Neeson. Is that the one where they open with the question, who's the main character?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yep.
Like, that's such a brilliant, subtle, like, who's the main character of this movie? You have no idea. There is no main character. It's just sequence after sequence after sequence. Okay.
But they're great sequences. So,
but like, if you had given this to like Zack Snyder and said, give me 6 music video action set pieces in a row, that's better than this.
And
we
Qui-Gon
got that
is
with Sucker
just
Punch.
Jacked, man.
So
like
jacked.
you've never even seen how jacked an old dude can get. It's unreal. You know?
Oh yeah.
I have a very particular set of skills.
Jeez. All right. Andy, we'll start with you. What would you grade? What would you grade the Phantom Menace?
Oh, dude, all 89 minutes of it, solid B.
I'm gonna ignore your grade. Brian, what would you give Phantom Menace?
This is like one of the hardest movies ever to grade for me because it's just so bad on so many levels. But there is a couple of high points, and those high points are really good. And I don't know, it still has some of the Star Wars. It's not the magic is lost in this, but there's like, if I put together a supercut, there's like a 25-minute supercut that kind of feels like Star Wars, and I love Star Wars just, more than anything. So it's always been very hard for me to grade it out. And I know that it gets worse. So it's like, you can't give it a passing grade, but it'd be very disingenuous to give it an F or something, knowing what comes next. So I don't know, like, for me, when I do Rotten Tomato, when I get to put in a grade on Rotten Tomatoes, it's fresh is B and above, and every once in a while B minus like kind of slides in there. So this is not that high. I think I put this at like a C minus maybe, but not quite. It's definitely a D or an F without Duel of the Fates. But that last 20 minutes just really, really does quite well. So sorry, long-winded. C, I guess C minus for me.
I think so. If you're looking at it like a rubric, like you'd have to give a 10 for like lightsaber stuff, action sequences, even the pod racing, right?
Yeah,
well shot. You'd have to give it like an 8 or a 9 for music, because even though Duel of the Fates is great, like the rest of it's okay. Mm-hmm. But then you've got to give it like 1s and 0s for everything else. I'm still going F. So bad, dude.
Ariel, I do think that there's an easy way for us all to come to an agreement, and that is just, this is the second worst Star Wars movie.
I agree.
Yeah,
I firmly agree. It's not, for me, it's not even close. Like it is clearly the second worst, and there's the third worst, whatever movie it is
it's
much
not even
better. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Like I hate. If you listen to the show, I hate The Last Jedi. But The Last Jedi is a well-made within itself, right?
Yeah, it's a competently made film. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it, and I don't. I mean, I like Last Jedi. I'm totally fine with Last Jedi. But even if you don't, it's very hard to watch that movie and say not a well-made movie. This is not the same. It's kind of the inverse of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is almost like Batman v Superman, where it's just like, except Batman v Superman had great casting. Like that had great casting all around, and it's just nobody like did it right. But yeah, F. I wouldn't, if I were like Kent, I wouldn't give this to F minus. Okay. Like I wouldn't, like it's not like Jack and Jill, Howard the Duck bad.
Yeah.
If I ever had to watch Attack of the Clones, maybe.
Man, I tell you,
watch Mortal Kombat, Ariel.
I made you watch what?
Mortal Kombat.
That was so bad. So bad. I thought it was going to be better, Andy. I really did.
I think that one's on our list coming up. So thanks, guys.
Brian, it's. Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
I hate Corona so much. I just want to go back to the theaters.
Okay, all right. Brian, is there anything that you would like to share in this regular numbered episode? It'll be posted to the main feed, but it's not like we're doing homework.
Fans of our show will treat this much like fans treat the prequel trilogy.
No, thanks for having me, guys. If you listen to Geek 101 and you don't listen to Mad About Movies, come check us out too. I think our shows pair well with each other. Like fine wines. That's what you do with wines, right? You drink two of them. I don't know.
You drink two at a time. Yeah.
It wasn't the best
You take
comparison.
a sip of one,
but,
then you take a sip of another.
So, yeah. Thanks for having me, man. This was good therapy. Good way to, like you said when you texted me, like I watched this movie anyway because Coop wanted to watch it, so I might as well put it to good use. So
yeah.
I did see this, by the way, when it came out in 3D. I don't know why, but like it was like. Well, it's Star Wars, and it's at the theater. I guess we gotta go.
You undoubtedly love Star Wars more than I.
Oh,
like,
I love Star Wars the most. I love Star Wars. Star Wars is my favorite thing, and also this movie exists. So it's
all right. Well, Brian, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter, Beagle12. You can find our show at Mad About Movies on Twitter. madaboutmoviespodcast.com. We have newsletter and a VIP page for Patreon and a Discord with all kinds of. I'm everywhere. I'm very online. Come find our show. Come find me, and I'm usually fun on Twitter ish, fun-ish, I guess.
Andy, where can people find you?
You can find me online on Letterboxd and Twitter at Hebrews Pale Ale.
Or you can find me at my newly changed Twitter handle at Portly Island Boy. You can find our show at Geek 101 Podcast on Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. Email us geek101pod@gmail.com. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed, and may the Force be with you.
But not with this movie.